Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could teach the gullible to never be so comfortable with lies they eat like comfort food? To disregard the bogus claims and pseudoscientific claims. Can you imagine just how much indeed the world would change? No more political predators playing on the populace with ilkes and plots to shift and kill metropolis. No more villains with the title in the Bible holding phony temper Bibles like the stuff they teach is vital. Imagine it was normal to have to prove a claim you make. And folks really feel ashamed expressing content that was fake. It's not to say we never make mistakes. It's just to say we go out of our way to show the evidence it takes.
Remain skeptical while you travel the road. The reason stay strapped with logic and facts. That's what it is, yo. Keep reality intact to help the truth grow. Question every claim, especially the ones you believe in. Remain skeptical while you travel the road. The reason.
Hello and welcome to Road to Reason. I'm your host, Nado Lopez, and we're going to be talking about some very interesting stuff today. The first things first, we're going to do some announcements. Did you want to handle some announcements?
Yeah. Well, first announcement is this is my first time co-hosting.
That's right. I apologize. This is Justus Cade. His first time hosting. We're popping his cherry today, so...
He wasn't supposed to say that.
I wasn't supposed to say that.
Yeah, so this is my first time. I'm excited to be on here and really looking forward to this. Some of the announcements. First of all, I'll make sure everyone tunes in next week where we will have none other but Jesus himself and
Mr. Hankey.
Mr. Hankey.
Yeah.
So that's going to be something definitely you want to see. What else we got going on?
So I guess the Reason Rally is coming up soon. I don't really have
that's
too
going
much
to be
information
midway
on that.
through 2016, but that's something we'll be hearing a lot about over the next several months. So be sure to tune in and check out Reason Rally, check out their website, check out their Facebook, and spread the word. We want it to be really big. Another week after next, we're going to have David and Rob to continue the Christmas festivities by taking a peek under the Pope's robes. So I'll let you figure out what that means later on. And what else we got going on?
I think we're going to go over some news stories, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. In the news, the recent, what was it?
Planned Parenthood
attack, yeah.
Yeah, that's something we want to touch on briefly. Definitely it's a tragedy, and our hearts go out to everyone who's affected by that. And it's going to somewhat tie into our topic today, which we'll get into later, obviously, but the terrible attack on the Planned Parenthood facility, and it was on Thanksgiving, so that's really tragic. I also wanted to throw out one more announcement. I think we're going to talk about David Silverman's new book that's coming out as well.
Right.
Called Fighting God. So we wanted to make a reference of that new book that's out there.
I haven't read it yet, but I heard it's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm sure most people haven't read it yet. Yeah. But and then we had the Planned Parenthood shooting. That was definitely something that was difficult, and it will tie in, as I said, with our topic later. And then we had we're going to talk about another news story as well.
The other news story that we were going to talk about.
Pull it up for you right here. This is one by Hemant Mehta, known as the Friendly Atheist, also the Atheist Voice. And he was writing about it's titled It's Astonishing What Quality UK Newspaper Can Get Away With Saying About Religious Minority. And it's a columnist, Giles Coren. And did you want to read what he wrote in this
absolutely.
UK newspaper?
In print from Giles Coren, he states, "God, I hate Jews. I don't think there can be a group of people on earth more convinced of their own righteousness, more dismissive of other people's interests and beliefs, or more dogmatic and humorless about their own massively unappealing and totally irrelevant Weltanschmog than the I Believe in Yahweh squad."
And he's that word. I don't know how to pronounce it either. Weltanschauung. It's the German word it's where the word worldview and the idea of worldview comes from. And he's just really tearing into Jewish people in very derogatory ways. And we actually, one thing we brought up Hemant because he is going to be our secular person of the week.
Oh yeah.
Hemant is he's known as the Friendly Atheist. He has a Friendly Atheist podcast. He is also a YouTube channel called The Atheist Voice. He has his blog on Patheos, and he's a great writer, great material. And he's been featured on things like CNN, Fox, and other very reputable or at least big news media. And then he's also part of the Foundation Beyond Belief, which is a great secular charity that deals with disaster relief and things like that. So we wanted to feature him. I have been a big fan of him for many years. He is someone who is never scared to just spearhead confrontational issues and controversial issues, especially within the secular community. And he does so with a lot of tact, and he also, but he'll still do it in a very bold way where he will confront issues that many people would often want to turn a blind eye to. So I really appreciate him for that, and so I just wanted to bring that up as our secular person of the week.
No, absolutely. And I was just introduced to him today through the video you showed me, and it's fascinating. He's a very interesting person to watch. And I think the joke of the day is what we got to talk about.
Well, we came up with a joke, and it's one that actually I had a friend of mine told me recently. I was eating a restaurant. So why don't you
joke
tell us that?
So here we go. Why did the Amish man divorce his wife?
I don't know, Nando. Why?
2 men a night.
Just let that one sink in for a little bit. But anyway, so that one made me laugh. And so I wanted to, I guess we should probably bring things back to the news story. And I don't know if we can tell you what we wanted to talk about today. We're going to have a special guest with us today who's a repeat guest. He's been here before, and we'll be introducing him shortly.
I'm very excited, actually. He's a very interesting character, very smart guy, and I love his movies. Ben Stiller is an amazing actor. So
okay, sorry to disappoint. It's not actually Ben Stiller, although he's been told that he looks like him, and we'll force him to have to give us his best Blue Steel impression. But so I don't know if Chris Shelton is going to be our guest.
Chris Shelton will be on the show.
I don't know if it's too soon to give all the rest of the gory details about him, if we're going to save those for later. But one thing that he and I and Nando and myself will be discussing, not only some surprises that Chris will share of his own doing, but just a general topic as well of just with all the news going on with ISIS, and we have Planned Parenthood shootings, and we have a lot of people asking questions about, is religion to blame? Why do people do these terrible things? And so that's going to be related to what we're going to talk about in a bit as well.
You hear that a lot. You hear that a lot from people, that religion is, responsible for this, that, and the other thing. And I don't know how factual those claims are, but we're going to be discussing that a lot today.
And I think it's going to be interesting because all three of us, Chris, Nando, myself, I think we all have slightly different perspectives on the topic. So we're hoping it'll be a lively, friendly, but interesting discussion that you're all going to want to take a look at. And obviously some can be a part of, with call-ins and things like that. So I guess since we fortunately got through things a little bit quicker than we had I necessarily anticipated, maybe I should tell everyone a little bit about my background. I'm just a nobody right now, and so I wanted to introduce myself to everyone. My name is Justus, Cade, and my biggest claim to fame, as it were, in the secular community is that I am a graduate of none other than Liberty University. That's Jerry Falwell's school in Lynchburg, Virginia, and I went all 4 years there. I graduated in 2008, and while there I was also, I served as a prayer leader, which meant I had a group of guys that I would meet with every week, and we'd have prayer meetings and things like that. And then later I became a spiritual life director, which basically I organized groups of prayer leaders, and I made sure that everyone was having their spiritual needs met, and that they were going to church or things like that, or if they weren't going to church, finding out why. I was also raised by a great, loving, wonderful family, but who also happened to be biblical literalists, young earth creationists, missionaries, pastors, and so I was very, very sheltered from a lot of opposing views. But my parents, they're great. They gave me a great education at home, because you can't go to public schools where they teach things like evolution. But
wow.
But they did fortunately give me a good foundation to become a good skeptic. And I eventually, through my college years, wanting to pursue actually becoming a minister at one point, began looking into the origin of my faith as a Christian and the origin of the Bible, and I quickly found myself unable to maintain those beliefs. But I still have a desire to help people and do good things, and so now I consider myself a humanist, and I try to do that, but just do it apart from, help people, but just not with the same religious bent that I used to have.
Right,
So,
without the reward and punishment system that you used to have.
yeah, and also beliefs that in themselves oftentimes end up impeding progress on those fronts in terms of, obviously, even as a Christian, I'm ashamed to say I used to be very homophobic, for example.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was just because I was following the rules, following what I was taught. I remember it was actually, through reading Bart Ehrman's works, especially, I came to realize the Bible was an invention of man. And I remember it was almost this wave of relief that came over me when I realized, I don't have to discriminate against gay people anymore. This is great, because I never really liked that I had to kind of be a jerk, but I felt like this is what God says, and He says that what you're doing is wrong. So that's kind of a very sloppy and brief history, but that's basically where I came from. I came from a very strict Protestant biblical literalist background, and now I am here helping to host this show, and I'm privileged and honored that you guys have let me come on here with you.
Absolutely. So, we love having you here, and the discussions we've had, prior to this. I'm kind of excited about what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. I enjoy them.
Yeah. So,
I think we're coming up on a break pretty soon, actually.
Yeah, we got a good minute.
Okay.
Yeah. So we.
Well, we got a minute to kill, so while we do that, I just wanted to talk a bit more about that one news story, the tragedy with the Planned Parenthood shooting. I think his name is Robert Louis Deere is his name, and he. It's now come out on CNN that he has been citing the selling of baby parts as part of seemingly his motivation. Obviously, we know about the Planned Parenthood videos that took the media by storm recently. There's been obviously a lot of criticisms levied against those for, I think, good reasons, that they were manipulated to be somewhat misrepresentations and misleading. And it's going to tie in as we talk about how religious ideology motivates people. I think you can see where you have bad ideas, where people have this hatred that's built up about organizations like Planned Parenthood, and it takes one crazy to take those ideas and put terrible actions behind them.
And one can't help but think that it has a lot to do with how prevalent that's been in recent news stories and the right wings. But we are going to take a commercial break at this point, and we'll be right back.
Yeah.
I think we had to go with the extension.
A critical thinker is in a frame of mind of always questioning everything, including things they don't necessarily want to question. You may have done some research and satisfied yourself on a position you're sure is right. Good. Now, after a month or two of that,
So we got 3 minutes and
go
we're back on?
look at some research that opposes your point of view or challenges the position you've
That's
taken.
fine, and then we're gonna.
You can even
just
look into
immediately
it
go
with
to
the
calling
idea
Chris
of
in.
poking holes in their arguments if you want, but it would be better to just have an open mind and read it as though you've never heard or seen anything on the issue before.
Because that should be your first thing.
You may be very surprised what you learn, and if you're doing this right, you will be.
He's on right now?
Always be open to opposing points of view and counter arguments. That's what critical
Chris, are
thinking
you
is
still
all
hearing
about.
all of this?
And now you know.
Oh, I can't hear you. Sorry, Chris. We'll have to call you in about 5.
Thank you, dear. Well, you're very supple. Just like I was at your age. Back then, I was a sex expert. Used to call me the buttered biscuit. I know about birth control, too. So you can ask me anything, baby.
bedsider.org has birth control information and a lot more. And it's...
Have you had sex in this car yet?
This is Richard Dawkins. Doing commercials is unfamiliar territory for me, but I'm inviting you to watch Road to Reason, a skeptic's guide to the 21st century, on Fairfax Public Access every Sunday. Each week the hosts tackle wishful thinking, religion, pseudoscience, and the harm they cause, with a combination of facts, humor, and community involvement. They challenge believers to defend their faith and give you, the skeptic, a voice. With live call-ins for viewers and streaming on the World Wide Web, there's never a dull moment. Don't wait. Look at them now on Facebook and YouTube, and remember to watch Road to Reason, a skeptic's guide to the 21st century, or there'll be hell to pay.
Looks like it's done.
Don't let salmonella get funky with your chicken. On average, 1 in 6 Americans will get a foodborne illness this year. You can't see these microbes, but they might be there. So learn the right temperature to cook each type of meat. Keep your family safe at foodsafety.gov.
Body language can tell you all sorts of things. Like someone is having a stroke. Know the sudden signs. Learn fast. Face drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulty. Time to call 911 and get them to a hospital immediately. Learn the body language and spot a stroke fast.
Why is Connor having trouble focusing in school?
Having trouble finding Connor's middle school? Would you like directions?
No, why is Connor having trouble focusing in school?
Finding lowest airfare to Istanbul.
No, I'm tired of fighting with him over homework.
Home, walk, restaurant. Need a review?
No, I need help. He's very smart, but his mind wanders. He's disorganized.
I think I understand.
Oh, good.
French fries. Finding best potatoes.
No!
Russet. Fingerling. Yukon Gold.
Why don't you understand me?
Sorry, I was trying to show how Connor feels every day. Frustrating, isn't it? Redirecting to understood.org.
For the 1 in 5 kids with learning and attention issues, this is what life can feel like. Explore understood.org, a free online resource about learning and attention issues, designed to help your child thrive in school and in life. Understood.org, because understanding is everything.
Now we're straight ahead. Welcome back.
All right. Well, I guess we're back on now, and we will be bringing in Chris Shelton briefly, talk about his new book, and also join us in a conversation about the question of, is religion harmful, and is that something we should even be saying? Is it even a meaningful thing to say, or is it a right thing to say? So we'll be talking about that. But first, we need to bring Chris on. So we're gonna get our guys in the back room to hook us up over there.
How you doing, Chris?
Hello.
Good.
Welcome
I'm
to the
doing
show.
great. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So, what's going on in the world of Scientology?
Well, quite a bit, actually. It's never been a better time to be a critic of Scientology than now. As you know, some of your viewers might remember from my previous times on the show, I was involved in Scientology for 27 years and got out about 2.5 years ago or so, and have been a rather vocal critic of it since then, after I found out that it was really just a money-making scam using religious cloaking rather than being a real religion that was trying to actually be of public benefit, which is why Scientology has not been recognized officially as a religion in all the countries of the world, is because it does not provide real public benefit. So unfortunately, the public benefits test in the United States is pretty much non-existent, and almost any group can become a religion here. So it was very easy for Scientology to get religious status and tax exemption here in the United States. But that is being challenged now, and it's being challenged very openly and very well. A lot of facts coming out about Scientology now that have needed to see the light of day for a very long time. And in fact, Leah Remini, who's a celebrity from King of Queens show, she has written a book called Troublemaker, and that has hit the lines, and it's been very revelatory about some of the crazy that goes on behind the scenes in Scientology. So that's been a real big headliner in the last month or so.
I've heard a lot of things about Scientology, and I mean, I think I'm fairly well versed in the religion. You know, I mean, I actually stopped at the DC branch of the Scientology church, and I used I don't know the name of the device where you have to hold the aluminum cans that are connected to the machine. The
e-meter.
The e-meter. Yeah. I kept thinking it was like the Thetan meter or something like that, but How high up did you get in the religion before you started like learning about some of the like more advanced teachings and stuff? Like, did you have to work with them a long time before you found any of that stuff out? Like, I don't know how.
No, they can start hitting you with some of that stuff pretty early on. But within the first couple of years of being a Scientologist, I learned how to use that e-meter and learned a lot of the procedures and stuff. They encourage a lot of indoctrination in Scientology, their training side of it. But there's such a wealth of information. Hubbard was very prolific, and there's over 3,000 recorded lectures. There's easily over 1 million words of written text, and 26 books, all this material. So they keep you busy for years learning all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I had a question that I think would be something that I'm still learning about, having spoken to Chris a couple times now, and I think would be great for the viewers as well. But you seem to categorize Scientology in a slightly different category, as you alluded to, than some of the other religions, including the fact that the public good being one of the elements. But could you kind of expound on that a bit more, on your views as to why you think those are different, and what those differences are, and maybe explain that to everybody?
Absolutely. There's a thing called there's a fairly well defined. There's some very good papers out there that define what a destructive cult is. And Scientology falls under the category of a destructive cult. And that is, in my way of thinking and the way I approach critical thinking, that is a different thing from a valid religious movement. A destructive cult has certain characteristics, one of them being that it's very money-oriented, another one being that its dogma is put out by a leader or leaders who are not to be questioned. They are only to be listened to, and their orders are only to be followed. So the group becomes very dogmatic. It's also very insular. It fosters an us versus them mentality, where the group members start feeling very exclusive and very insular and very together and united. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with a group, having an esprit de corps. But the us versus them mentality comes in where everyone else in the world is wrong or is somehow inferior because they don't share the same beliefs as those who are in the destructive cult. And that is very dangerous thinking, because it sets up justification for exclusivity and prejudice and eventually even violence. So those are just some of the characteristics of a destructive cult that I found Scientology pretty much fits the bill on. And in fact, according to cult researcher and psychologist Steve Hassan, there are over 5,000 destructive cults in the world, and they're not all religion-based. There are political cults, even social movements can develop small groups of people who act very cult-like, and even sports. You can get people who get pretty culty, when it comes to their sports team and that sort of thing. So it's a mindset that can be created amongst any group of people, even down to, according to cult therapist Rachel Bernstein, who I've been interviewing and speaking with recently on my podcast and my YouTube channel, it can even come down to two people. You can have an abusive relationship that has almost all the characteristics of a destructive cult.
I've never...
The mind control techniques and the undue influence that a person can exert on another person are almost a carbon copy of what a destructive cult leader will use on his followers. And I think that's why she has put that out there.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I've heard the use of the word cult a lot from religious people to describe smaller faiths, but I do like your distinction, going into destructive cults rather than just cults.
And I have a question.
Well,
Go ahead.
It's a very important distinction because we use the term destructive cult to differentiate that from a valid religious movement, and the word cult itself is defined in the dictionary, and strictly speaking, any religion meets the definition of a cult. Lots of groups meet the definition of a cult. So we use the word destructive cult to make it very clear that we're talking about a group that has very specific characteristics that are not in the best interests of their followers.
Well, and I was going to ask because as someone who, going to Liberty University, one thing that was actually, I think, really helpful for opening my mind to other ideas is that there are so many different Christian denominations represented there. And so, some of my siblings who went to some secular party schools, or not even it has to be a party school, but just secular, it often actually make them much more solidify their faith because they were alone on an island and they only could find other people that maybe one in every 1,000 that shared their beliefs, and they would make this little huddle of, of just solid Christians, whereas I could be open to questioning and I could find all these different people who claim to be Christians but who believe drastically different things. And within that, there are often many little offshoots and spin-offs that are all part of the Christian umbrella that are very, not only in the traditional sense cult-like, but even a destructive cult. I actually went to a church that when they found out that I was questioning the inerrancy of Scripture and the divinity of Christ, I was questioning those doctrines, as it became more apparent that I did not accept them, I was actually literally excommunicated, and the members were forbidden by the church leadership to have social interaction with me other than essentially attempts to proselytize and bring me back in. So I wasn't allowed to be invited to dinners anymore. I wasn't allowed to just hang out with them as a friend. I was considered an apostate, an enemy. And to me, I think that really fits your description of a destructive cult. But
very, very much so. Yeah. Yes, very much so. Christianity is such a broad umbrella, and when you look at things like the Westboro Baptists, you were looking at a destructive cult. And unfortunately, some people who don't make a distinction or should, really kind of look at it a bit more closely will generalize all of Christianity as a destructive cult, and that's just simply not true.
Gotcha.
I mean, you could definitely make that argument looking at the history of Christianity and just the general teachings of the book that the Christian faith is based on. There's a lot of anger and there's a lot of hatred in the Bible, not just towards homosexuals, but towards, insubordinate children. They have committed an abomination and they should be killed, or any woman who practices bestiality. You should slay the beast and stone the woman to death. I mean, there's a lot of anger and hatred in the Bible, and it's teaching those things. It's teaching those things to the people that are supposed to be following these things.
And before you respond, Chris, can I use this as an opportunity to kind of officially segue into the topic that we said we wanted to discuss, perhaps, because as Nando said, he felt some could make an argument that you could call all of Christianity that way, all of Christianity a destructive cult. And I happen to know, including myself, there's some various different opinions on that topic, and that's kind of what we wanted to discuss. So let's, I guess, use that as we can get back and we'll work at Scientology, and I'm sure, but let's go ahead and officially, I guess, talk about, is Christianity as a whole harmful? And this is kind of what we're talking about as a topic. And what does it mean to say that? Because it's a very broad topic. What does it mean to say even all of Christianity is harmful, or all of Christianity is a destructive cult?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to kind of make that an official segue, so to speak, and now turn it over here so we can move the conversation in that direction.
Sure. There are many, many ways to address this topic and different avenues of approach to it. In response to the question there on the Bible, sure, there is source material there that is clearly, misogynistic, homophobic, very antagonistic to, non-believers. But you have to also, temper that with the real world application of that book. I think I'm personally not an atheist. I'm not a Christian. I'm not a Christian apologist. I'm not kind of anything. So I don't approach this with a bias for or against Christianity. I'm just saying that to make it clear where I'm coming from. I do forward a position of tolerance for belief. And one of the main reasons I do that is because I think it's impossible to imagine a world where there is no belief. It's simply in our nature to have supernatural beliefs of some kind, at least a majority of us.
For some of us.
And, I think that's fairly objectively evidenced by the fact that the majority of the human population has supernatural beliefs of some kind. So education maybe could overcome some of that, but I don't think we're ever going to get rid of it. So we have to learn to tolerate and get along with each other despite that.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of that is indoctrination, though. You got people coming into a specific background, and they're taught this one specific religion, and they're taught that religion is the way. And I think if that wasn't as prevalent, I don't think you would have, you wouldn't have as widespread as much of the population being religious as they are right now. It's that you're raised into it and you're force-fed religion. I mean, I went through the same thing growing up, and it's.
I can't disagree with you or say that you're wrong about that. It will take generations for us to create a world where that's not the case.
We have to try.
So in the meantime, what do we do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
So just maybe we could briefly, each of us kind of summarize the perspectives that we're taking on this question. Would you describe, Chris, your position as being that religion is generally in itself not harmful, that maybe there are factions of it that can be, but intrinsically having these supernatural beliefs in themselves is more or less a kind of a natural thing that humans fall into? Am I summarizing you correctly on that?
Well, yeah, and I have to just, state, as part of that, I think one of the reasons why you're not ever going to get rid of it, or why it's necessary or a necessary part of our existence, is that religion serves, one major function of religion is to serve as answers to questions that we don't have any other way of answering. And there are certain questions of existence that science isn't there yet on. Maybe science will get there at some point, but in human history, science has not gotten there yet. We don't have an objective answer as to whether where we came from exactly. The Big Bang always, go, okay, fine, but where did all that come from? I mean, there's always an earlier beginning to things that we don't have any solid answer on. What is the nature of love? What is faith? These various things that human beings experience that science just doesn't have a solid answer to yet. Well, religion provides some degree of emotional answer and support to those questions, and that's why people embrace it. That's one reason, not the only reason.
Do you think that's a justification?
I think
or is that just the reason?
It's simply a fact of life that's going to happen because we're human.
Yeah.
And so, eventually, maybe science and objective evidence will have answers to those questions. But until it does, those questions aren't going to go away. And people will continue to seek answers to those questions, and they want something that they can hold on to. And religion fills that niche. So that's sort of the inevitability of religion to me. I don't feel that in itself is a destructive activity or is something that's harmful, because people have a natural curiosity. They have that yearning to know, and that's just part of our nature. So I don't find that part of it harmful. What I find harmful is when destructive cult leader types take those beliefs and create an us versus them situation within groups of people in these religions or of these religious beliefs, and start using that to justify and create antagonism and reasons to hate or not get along with or not tolerate the existence of other people who don't believe the same way. And that's man-made, and that's something that is also part of our nature. That whole us versus them thing is a very easy thing to appeal to and create in a human being. But that's the thing that I think is the real target that we have to overcome, and that is broader than religion because it exists in politics, and again, like I mentioned before, sports, social activities. Almost any group of people who get together can have that us versus them mentality created, and that, I think, is the harmful thing that we need to actually be addressing in our nature.
Well, if I could, and just to make sure I'm understanding you, it seems that you're saying because it is a natural consequence of human psychology to seek out religious answers. But in terms of the question of whether that's harmful or not, I think it maybe misses the point in one sense that humans actually also have been shown to have a natural tendency to carry implicit forms of racism. We are, even those of us who adamantly are against racism and fighting against racial inequality, there's psychological tests that they've done where they show that people often still carry implicit racial biases that they don't even realize they have. And it's just hardwired into us that when people are different than us and different than we're expected, we often carry prejudices, there you go, I can speak now, carry prejudices that we don't realize we have. And so one could likewise say, well, these are natural human tendencies to be racist, but that doesn't mean that racism isn't a harmful ideology. It most definitely is. So that would be...
Well, sure, but racism doesn't answer the question of where we come from, what we're here for. That racism is by its very nature and definition, a harmful belief.
Yeah, but religion only answers that question in the same way that saying the presents under the Christmas tree come from Santa. You know, we know that that's not true, but we're just, making this stuff up. And I mean, they're unfalsifiable claims. So it's not enough to say we know that's not true, because that's your assertion. It's not necessarily the belief of a Catholic priest that he knows it's not true, but he's saying it anyway. He knows it's true. I wasn't saying that.
Well, I think you made your position. I think I understand better what you're saying. So you're saying that religion provides, the technical term would be doxastic closure. It gives us that closure of feeling like we know the answer, even if we maybe don't. But it's a human need to have that closure. And you're saying religion provides that for people, for better or for worse, whether or not, as a critical thinker, we should, I think we both agree there's times it's better to admit we don't know, but people aren't wired that way. People aren't wired to admit we don't know, and they need something to fill that gap. And you think that religion does that, and until science can answer everything, we need religion to fill that gap.
I think where it becomes harmful is that at that point, that's the wall. I don't know the answer, so God must have done it. Now I don't need to look any further to find any more answers because I already have my answer, and that's where it's harmful.
For sure. Well, and I agree with you on that, because it would be, I feel, a lot more intellectually honest if a lot more of us could take a more agnostic view on the subject of belief. Unfortunately, and again, I guess it's part of our nature, once we grab onto certain ideas that have emotional appeal to us, we can't seem to let them go or see past them. It's a flaw in our nature. I don't like it. I don't agree with it. I don't think it should be that way. I really, really wish we could be more critical thinkers inherently, but unfortunately my experience so far is that critical thinking is something that is taught. It's not necessarily a natural part of our tendency, because we're so ruled by our emotions and what feels good. So, and religion fits right into there. I agree completely that in a world of more critical thinking, there would be a lot more agnostic views, and we would be able to more easily acknowledge that we simply don't know.
Well,
but
I think that comes
that's
down
a real
to
uncomfortable position for a lot of people. They're not willing to not know. They have to have something to fill that niche, and that's where religion offers an answer for them that is emotionally satisfying, even if it's not intellectually satisfying.
One thing I wanted to maybe clarify is I think much of these discussions of even statements like religion is harmful come down to semantics and what we mean when we say religion. What does that include? I think we maybe are operating with different definitions, but also even in the case of what you just said about agnosticism, most atheists that I've ever met, including myself, would call ourselves to a degree agnostic atheists, where we mean that we don't think it's known with certainty that there's no God, but we personally we lean towards thinking there isn't one. And we in fact, some of us, like myself, I feel fairly confident in making the claim that I don't think there's a God. And to me, when I say I know something, I just mean that I have a high degree of confidence. And so I call myself an atheist for that reason. But it's not that I am not open to the possibility of being proven wrong. I'm not close to the idea that one day, if someone presents the right evidence, that I could say, oh, I guess I was wrong, there is a God.
Right, and that indicates that you have an intellectually honest view on that, which is good, and that you're open to, as a critical thinker, you're open to new information and new data, and that's very good. And I wish more people were like that, because I think that, because I have certainly met some atheists who don't go there, who are like, there is no God, and God damn it, that's just how it is, and you're like, whoa, dude. Really wish I had that degree of certainty about anything,
I like how you threw the "God damn it" in there. That was.
I think we're allowed to say that now, but I've met an atheist who says that even if a God appeared to them, that they would just assume they were hallucinating and that they wouldn't be open to it. And I disagree with them on that. I say if you could come here and part the Red Sea in front of me, I would definitely reconsider my beliefs.
Exactly.
I would definitely, be open to that kind of convincing, but I just don't have any reasonable expectation that will ever be the case in any reality.
I think if I ever ran into God, and he's standing directly in front of me, I would ask, if you want us to believe in you, why is the only evidence that you're here these textbooks, that are collected throughout millennia and put together in stories, fantastical stories full of hatred, and ask him all the questions about how he or she allowed the world to become the way that it is, and provided us with the ability to reason and the logical capacity to determine that there is no need for a God and still expect us to believe that there is one.
And I could not agree with you more on that, and I don't think that the concept or the mock-up or the creation of the Christian God is in any way, that has no validity to me. I personally can't go there. It's so clearly a man-made creation to me that I just kind of go, yeah, okay. That doesn't mean that there is no creator in some ultimate sense, and I guess I go sort of theist on that, if there's a label there on that. But I agree with you completely, because the Christian God has so much to answer for. Yeah. That it's almost ridiculous to logically, rationally think of how such a being could exist.
And I know this sidetrack was my fault, because it was just for clarification. So I will also try to bring this back, especially for those viewers who really want to kind of hear more about what our views on religion and it being harmful are. So to try to bring that back into that, I know I kind of take a very middle ground approach, because I do think there are some harms with believing things on faith. They often lead to bad decisions when you believe things. And by faith, I don't just mean putting trust the same way that you trust a friend to be on time. I mean the type of faith where you believe something that you don't have good reasons to believe. You believe your team is going to win the Super Bowl even though they're already 3-6 and they have a terrible team.
Watch.
Maybe that's hope, but sometimes if someone is convinced that the Redskins are going to go to the Super Bowl this year, they're probably wrong and they don't have good reason to believe that. And
I believe that every year. In one year, it's going to happen.
Maybe hope is a better term, but I think at your core, you wouldn't be betting the house on them. But and so I think there are problems though when people are adamantly believing something for which they have no good reason, because it sets precedent for believing things that often are harmful. We saw recently there's a father recently who just lost custody of his son because he tried to treat autism with homeopathic remedies that are shown not to work and causing harm because of his faith-based belief on what this medicine can do. And so I see that faith can have a lot of negative effects as setting precedent, although not intrinsically so. There's certain harmless faith-based beliefs, that we all used to, that we have an eternal soul that embodies this physical body. That's not causing a lot of harm, but there are, I'm not going to get into details. There's certainly arguments of beliefs in afterlife and how that can affect the way people act, but I would say that for me, I would actually side more with Chris on saying that religion isn't intrinsically harmful, but I would say that it's dogmatism and closed-mindedness that we see the harm. And there's many people who rightfully point out the Stalins out there who are dogmatically atheistic and out there trying to enforce their views closed-mindedly against and thought police, and I think that's where the harm comes in. Whenever a belief, whatever it may be, is dogmatically enforced or closed-mindedly held to, that you see harm come from that. You see people who are unwilling to consider new ideas. And so I see how religious beliefs, faith-based beliefs are often biased towards being dogmatic, because the core of a religious belief is that this is how reality is. Yeah. I don't have a good reason to explain why. You have to take it by faith, and you must believe it in order to receive whatever blessing or afterlife or whatever the case may be. And so that kind of forms a psychological manipulation where that which is not of faith is sin, the Bible says, and to even question your faith is a sin by many people's standards. So it has this self-perpetuating closed-mindedness, and I see that many religions tend towards that, and that's where I find myself maybe more agreeing with the side that says religions are harmful. But
I would say most religions kind of agree with that. There's a select few that I've heard of and learned about that don't have those strong dogmatic views towards things, but for the most part you cannot separate that from religion, and that's where I come from. That's where my point of view is coming from on that.
Sure. I think you're nailing the exact point where it goes off the rails, and that is bringing it back to what I mentioned earlier in terms of destructive cults, the point where you are fostering an us versus them mentality and creating this exclusivity within your own little club. Certainly it doesn't just happen in religion, but we're talking about religion, and it's very obvious when it happens in religion. And you get these groups who start preaching violence and hatred and fomenting that against non-believers or people who have different beliefs than they do. And that is where it goes totally off the rails. You get, certain religions don't do that and don't seem to have much of a history of ever having done that. I think of Buddhism or Hinduism. Now, again, I'm saying that as from a layman's understanding of history of those subjects, but you certainly don't hear about radical Buddhists, who run around with AKs taking out, people who
certainly
don't
less common.
Follow the teachings of Gautama Siddhartha, right? So it's not necessarily inherent in religious belief that there be violence or us versus them thinking. Mm-hmm. Somebody has to create that, and there are people. And again, flaw in the human, psyche, that we have that sort of tribal, mentality. So religion opens itself wide open to that, because people get so passionate and so emotional about it. Oh, yeah. And that is where it does become harmful. And there must be some way, I don't know the way, but there's got to be some way that we can educate people beyond that way of thinking and prevent psychotic people really from, and I'm not calling followers psychotic, I'm saying that there are people who become religious leaders who have very antisocial tendencies. Yeah. And they start preaching those tendencies to their flock. And those guys and group dynamics being what they are, they eat it up, and before you know it, you've got that whole us versus them thing going. Yeah. So that is what we have to be on guard for. It does happen. There's no question about it. It's very, very dangerous. I guess my position is simply that, well, we're not going to take religion out, but we can certainly police that behavior, and we can certainly watch for those kind of danger signs in religious groups, and we can do something about that.
And we can try to take Scientology out, at least.
Well, exactly.
Well, and
you know, I've gone so far with Scientology as to say it's not even a valid religion. Now, I'm going to get a lot of people in the world of Scientology who are going to disagree with me on that, but it's just straight up money-making scam. But if we call it a religion, we're talking about, you know, a destructive cult. It's almost down the line. Chuck, 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 chuck. Every single characteristic of a destructive cult, it fits the bill.
Mm-hmm. Well, when the person who initiated the religion states prior to doing so that he's going to invent a religion and then does so, it's kind of self-evident that it's not a legitimate religion. So.
It's ridiculous, and in the book that I'm writing, that I'm almost done with, actually finished, have it all in draft form now. I'm calling my book Scientology A to Xenu, and it's not a memoir. It is a critical analysis of Scientology, where I break down how that happened. And that happens in cults, you know, in these destructive cults, is you get these people following one guy, and that one guy starts preaching some real dangerous stuff, and the next thing you know, all of religion is getting a bad name, and all of supernatural belief is getting a bad name because of these really psychotic bad apples.
Well, can you give us a Reader's Digest kind of sneak preview of maybe how you explain that in your book?
Yeah, I break down the history of it and L. Ron Hubbard himself and his life, because he was a pathological liar his entire life. And when you get the truth of, you know, within the Scientology bubble world, they've created this persona of who L. Ron Hubbard was and how his life went. And it's a complete fable from beginning to end. And the Scientologists don't know that. So I broke down, you know, using bibliography or information and historical information and records and whatnot, you know, his life, where he was coming from, how he started it as a con, you know, in order to get money out of people. Started it with Dianetics, and then that moved into Scientology. The religion angle, he called it. It was very, very important to get tax exemption, you know, and and also have a religion, so he could make claims that were, you know, now nobody could take him to court over it because it was, you know, hey, it's a religion, man. You can't sue me over a belief.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that whole path. And then I also break down the pseudoscience of it. You know, they have practices in Scientology that sound very scientific and, you know, and smell very scientific, but they are not scientific at all.
Yeah, like we talked about the e-reader earlier, and one thing I noticed right off the bat was if I squeezed my hands a little tighter around the tin cans, the e-meter started shooting up, so I could manipulate the test very easily.
Oh, there's all kinds of mystique built up around that e-meter, and Hubbard explains what it does, and his explanations of it are completely faulty. And so, you know, through my channel and through my book here, I'm doing a critical analysis of Scientology. I'm not making any pretensions that it is unbiased. I was involved with that group for 27 years. It was very destructive to me emotionally and mentally, and getting out of it has been a recovery process. And part of my recovery process has been learning all about destructive cults and Scientology specifically, and now other destructive cults as well, such as the Gothard's Quiverful movement and the Jehovah's Witnesses, and you know, there's tons of them to learn about.
Yeah.
But when you break it down against the characteristics of what these groups actually are, you see right away that there is almost a cult leader playbook. You know, these guys could practically have a manual for themselves because they all do the exact same things from one cult to another.
I believe it was written by David Koresh, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he was another example of that. You know, there's just certain mind control techniques and methods of undue influence that these guys use that are part of our psychology that a certain percentage of people are going to fall for it. You know, and that's what we have to deal with. You know, in the secular community, you're dealing with a percentage of the population who does not so easily fall for it. But I think that there's sometimes a lack of understanding amongst the secularists that a certain percentage of the population doesn't think the way they do, and really truly responds to things that the secularists don't respond to, and so they don't understand how do these people fall for this. And you go, well, you really have to understand appeal to emotion and appeal to authority, because they're real, they exist. People do fall for that stuff.
Now, where can we find out more about your book?
Well, it'll be out probably within the next month or so. Just getting some final editing and legal review and stuff like that done on it. And it'll be published as an ebook. So I'll be, they can go to my website, the mncriticalthinking.com. It'll be definitely featured there, and also on my YouTube channel, which is simply Chris Shelton. If you just Google my name, you'll find my YouTube channel right away.
That's cool. Alrighty, well, we're getting close to the end of our show here, and obviously really grateful that you could join us, Chris. It's been fun talking, and hopefully this is not the last time. I know we've, in our preparations for this, we've conversed a few times, and I've enjoyed all our conversations every single time. It's been a lot of fun. We didn't unfortunately I was hoping for like a brawl or something, between the difference of opinions here, but unfortunately didn't quite get to get that out of Nando, because I was hoping he'd be, throwing punches over here. But I felt like I understood your position better than I did even through other conversations.
No, has there been any infighting behind the scenes in Scientology?
You mean amongst the ex-Scientology community?
Just, in general, infighting behind the scenes. Have you been having, I think that's the question.
More so within the community, but 60-second response.
Of course there is. Within any group of people, you're going to have people disagree with one another. And, when you have people coming out of a destructive cult like Scientology, there's a lot of recovery necessary. And sometimes people get pretty antagonistic, pugilistic, they want to fight about things.
What about those who are still in, though? I guess that's kind of... I'm curious about those who are still within Scientology. Is there a lot of infighting with those people? No,
not necessarily. There's a shunning process, so ex-Scientologists don't tend to talk to Scientologists too much.
Okay.
So a lot like the Amish.
I'm shunned by Scientologists. They won't talk to me.
Yeah.
So
alrighty.
I wish I could talk to them. I'd be more than happy to engage with them. I'm not shunning them.
Right. That's how I was with my ex-church as well. But
it was an absolute pleasure having you on the show, Chris.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks
it was
again.
a pleasure. I really thank you very much for having me on. This was fun.
All right.
Absolutely.
And
when can we expect Zoolander 2 to come out?
Yeah, I got nothing to say on that.
Alrighty, well, I guess that's our time. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and looking forward to next time.